because this is a comfort to so many parents. There was one building that stood out among all the rest. And I asked what building that was, and I was stunned when they said, that is the nursery. And then this magnificent figure turned toward me. Gradually, the shimmer that had covered his features vanished. I found myself face to face with none other.
Jim Woodford was a successful businessman and pilot whose life was focused on the pursuit of wealth. And he ended up getting the Guillain-Barré syndrome, and he died from an overdose of an experimental therapeutic drug that he was taking for the pain, having secretly exceeded the prescribed dosage. On April 21st, 2014, while sitting in his truck, he experienced intense heat. His lungs began to seize. He collapsed, hitting his head violently on the steering wheel. He was in a state of death with complete renal failure of all organs and no sign of brain activity for 11 hours. You've got to watch this testimony with me. He covers seeing horses in heaven, seeing babies, and then encountering Christ and being sent back. As someone myself who 4 years ago was in a traumatic brain accident where I actually left the earth for 18 days in a coma where the hospital actually asked for my last will, I'll be sharing some details with you here later on this video concerning what is on the other realm.
The guardians were wonderful. I felt safe. And then they're very elegant. I do have to tell you this because I think people would be very interested in this. I was taken by how they bowed to me. They bowed to me. And I felt rather uncomfortable because I should be bowing to them. And I questioned why, because it was such a bow of respect and subservience, and bowed very low. And they spoke with kind of this Victorian perfection in their voice. I didn't hear any thou or thee, but a very measured tone that incredibly, and with every word they spoke, there was wisdom. Anyway, I questioned the guardian that I eventually found out was mine all my life. Now that guy that angel had pulled an awful tour of duty, but I digress. But I asked why, and they said, James, do you not know that when we look at mankind, we see the spark of life of our master? Isn't that something? We who consider ourselves the lowest of the low are looked at by the angels in awe of us. Anyway, so we walk, and I'll skip forward, but they showed me many things, told me many things. I developed 360-degree omnivision, I call it. I heard everything. I understood everything. The beautiful flowers that spoke to me, that sang to me. But eventually we come to this beautiful pasture, and I guess they knew my love of horses. And again, I think it ties into your comment on your grandmother's chocolate chip cookies and my love of tapioca, because they wanted to show me something that would really make me happy. And the second guardian raised his hand, and suddenly coming from around the grove of trees toward me, and as they trotted across the grass lit up with light from their hooves. And there were three of the most magnificent horses coming toward me. Now, I had never studied the Bible. I had no idea at that time that when Jesus comes back, he'll be riding a white horse. It's in the Bible. And I'm stunned, because as I stand there and they come right up to the fence, and I had loved their kind all my life, and they seemed to know that. And they looked at me with such love in their eyes. And I reached forward to stroke the neck of the lead horse, and my hand sank right into the body of this being of light. And when I pulled it back, Randy, the light of the horse's body stuck to my hand till I got it 10 to 12 inches beyond, and then it came back into the horse's body. And it was just phenomenal to watch and to experience. And I've come to call it the sticky love of God. That's something you hear every day. That was the horses. And so we went from there, and I'll skip through to a really important part. They were showing me more things, and I suddenly was conscious of one of the guardians standing next to me, and he said, "Hold my cloak." And so I reached over and held on, and suddenly we were above, looking down, I thought I was looking at a reflecting pool, but it opened up, and I realized I'm having an aerial tour of heaven. And I hate using that term because you hear people that talk about our experiences, Randy, and they call it heavenly tourism. You know, well, what a lack of faith that is to hear that term of derision. Um, I believe with all my heart. I know this is real. Um, I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't hallucinating. Um, and so I was able to look, and I didn't know at that time that I wasn't being allowed to stay. You have to remember that. And people say to me, "Did you see your family?" No, I did not. It was explained to me that later that um, I could not set foot in the heavenly city, but they would show me the heavenly city. Um, I didn't connect it with the fact that I wasn't staying. Um, so anyway, you know, to see the halls of knowledge, the halls of wisdom, how heaven is laid out, and yes, the streets are gold, but it's not the brassy gold that we come to think of on Earth. It's a different shimmer of gold. It's not the Fort Knox kind of gold. Uh, so saw many things, had the opportunity to ask many questions. The thing I do want to talk about, because this is a comfort to so many parents, there was one building that stood out among all the rest. And the buildings are made not of stone, not of wood, but of a material that has a light in it. Now, that I don't want it to sound too Las Vegasy, but it was a gentle, welcoming light. But this particular building glowed with a light that had a warmth to it. And I asked what building that was, and I was stunned when they said, "That is the nursery." And I responded, "Nursery in heaven?" And they said, "Yes, James, this is where the souls of aborted children or children who die in their innocence from disease or come back here. And each soul is so precious to God that they're cared for. They grow at a different rate because they're not growing a physical body. So they grow at about 3 times the rate that we do, that a child does on Earth. And this is where they take care and so on of the little souls that have been unwanted or have died." And I had no idea how this part of the story would have such an effect on women who have lost children. And it's been a blessing to explain to these parents that their child lives. Their child lives. And so, anyway, I getting right to the main event. After showing me much more, we came back to paradise, the ground of paradise, which was outside the walls, I learned. And I was looking once again at the horses, and I realized I hadn't seen my guardian for a while. So I turned to look for him, and I saw him, and he was about no more than maybe 40, 50 feet away on a small rise. And but when I looked, he was bent over, almost in a kneeling position, and was holding up a book. And facing him was a more magnificent figure than even the angels, but I couldn't see the face. You know, and it was in profile to me. Do you know how you drive down a hot road on a warm summer day, and there's a shimmer on the pavement? There was this kind of shimmer covering the features of this magnificent being that was, but clearly he was reading what the guardian was holding up. And I took note of the book that the guardian had taken out of his sleeve. And it was as thin as a cheap roadside diner menu. And suddenly the awareness came over me that what the guardian was holding was the book of my life. And instead of it being a book filled with good deeds and kindness, all I had to show for a life that I thought was the epitome of success was this tiny, tiny book. Thin. You know, Charles Dickens wrote a wonderful line when he wrote, "Mankind should have been my business." And instead, it was all about the pursuit of wealth. And all I had to show for it, although I thought myself a kind person, all I had to show for it was this little thin book. I am determined, fellas, that to live my life now, that when I go back, if they permit me to go back, when they open the book of my life for this chapter, they're going to need 3 angels and a forklift to get it open. You know? So anyway, I'm watching, and this figure is leaning forward, clearly intent on the little bit that's written in there, and suddenly the figure straightened up, and the angel folded the book, put it in his sleeve, and disappeared. And then this magnificent figure turned toward me. And as he turned from profile to direct on, suddenly the shimmer, gradually the shimmer that had covered his features vanished. And I found myself face to face with none other than Jesus Christ, the Son of God, someone that I thought was just some old Jewish legend that people had made up to create whatever. And I'm looking at this figure and the magnificence of this figure, not just the look of intense love and concern for me, but this golden light flowed out of him from seemed to start at his head and flow down his body. And it was light that behaved like slow moving water. It flowed off him and it flowed down that slope. And I fell to my knees and tried to crawl toward him. I had to get closer. And it was as though I had finally come home, that I had found what I had searched for all my life. And I started to crawl toward him and to get closer. And then his eyes looked into mine. And when I looked into those eyes of gray and green and blue, I was lost in the love of eternity. This magnificent creature knew me too, but this was a creature of love and forgiveness and desired to know me better. And for a split second, and Randy, you probably experienced this too, although my intellect knew better, it was as though when my eyes met his, it was as though I was the only one in creation, the only one he had ever created. He knew me that intimately and loved me that deeply. And it was a moment that I knew from then on that whatever happened to me, I was his forever. Forever.
After waking up, Jim Woodford went on to fully and miraculously recover from what was completely impossible. And as someone myself who 4 years ago, I was in a traumatic brain accident where my skull was cracked in half. My lungs had failed. I actually was resuscitated. I lost life and I was in a coma for 18 days. And I was in a place where I passed through the other veil. And I can attest to you that this testimony that he just shared isn't just something that I can relate with, but it is biblical. You can tell it's not just someone's imaginations, but here's what you need to understand. And there's a lot we need to talk about. I firstly want to address the animals topic of heaven. Of course, there aren't just horses. Of course, there are dogs and cats. And God doesn't give you desires. He doesn't give good gifts to the earth, yet withholds them from heaven. He's not double-minded. And so how beautiful it is that, of course, there are horses in heaven. And God knew that he had that desire on his heart. And he wanted to give him that wonder. He wanted to give him that awe and inspiration. And that's just beautiful. How powerful and how anointed it is that there's a nursery in heaven for all the lives that have been lost here on this earth. Humans are not just clumps of cells in the womb. Notice, God didn't say that all those babies in the nursery were simply inconveniences. They simply were up to the woman to choose. No, God valued those babies just as much as any other human being. And thank God they are still alive in heaven. And thank God we didn't lose them. However, man, I don't know about you, but if that testimony meant anything to you, it will drive you down here on this earth to help save lives. It will drive you to value life from the start. When I was before Jesus as well, I truly did feel like I was the only person that he had ever known. I really felt that he was solely focused just on me, that he had given up everything just for me. That if I was the only one to ever exist in the future, he would be more than satisfied. Like seriously, he was obsessed with, in love with me. And it ruined every expectation I had. And of course, actually, he sent me back to my body as well because of you. You that are watching this video, every single person, he sent me back to this earth to tell the truth of who he really is. You are his most beloved. You're worth everything to him.